Very good. That's right. That's right. Well, you have a great son for that too, then.
Good morning, everybody.
Oh yeah. Some of the best conversations happen that way.
Good morning. All right. Before we sing our Christmas carols, we have a couple of birthdays today. Miss Brenda and Brittany just happens to be over here too. Brittany's over here too. It's her birthday. And then Ruthie's is on Friday. It's not Friday? You don't have a birthday Friday? Don't you? She's not going to admit it. All right, let's sing Happy Birthday. Ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, God bless you. Happy birthday to you. All right, let's sing our Christmas carols. And there's also, while we've been talking about things, there's a hot cocoa bar that Tyler has put together for you guys. It's a homemade recipe. And there's also a sign up for our Christmas luncheon next week. All right, let's sing. Oh, come. Oh, come, ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. Oh, come, ye, oh, come ye together. Come and behold Him, born the King of Kings. Oh, come let us adore Him. Oh, come of Christmas carols, remember, raise your hand. Oh, yes, there's 2 Christmas carols right there. Raise your hand if you know the answer. At the end of a Charlie Brown Christmas, all the Peanuts gang sing this Christmas carol at the end of the show. Raise your hand if you know what Christmas carol it is. Karen?
Silent Night.
Nope. Yolanda?
Angels We Have Heard All Night.
Nope.
Maybe one of those.
Carol?
Oh, Christmas Tree?
No. Ruthie?
Joy to the World.
Nope. I always laugh at it because it just shows their mouth open wide.
There they go.
Brenda? Nope. It is more of an upbeat song.
Christmas Carol. I know, but I can't remember.
Okay, now?
Back to Hall.
No.
It's in here.
Raise your hand.
Newborn King.
What's the name of the song?
Hark the
Hark the herald angels sing.
I had to work through it like
All right, Donna's not here, so Russell, you get more time today. Don't forget to sign up for lunch and afterwards. Next week.
Steve. All right, good morning, everyone. So, I have a big question. Who likes snow?
Depends.
Depends. If it's just falling and you have no consequences.
I like it.
Okay, we love the snow when it's falling. Who got to get up at 3:45 yesterday morning and clean off their car? Come on, raise your hands. Let's go. Raise your hands. All the ice and snow, and then forgot to undo their headlights. So their headlights were covered in snow. Did that very thing. Forgot to do my headlights, turn my headlights on. Because it's right where I live. I'm driving out and I realize I can hardly see the road. And so, well, thankfully there's street lights. So, yeah, oh well. I don't think the people were too. I didn't do off my whole car because it's like 4 in the morning. It's 30-something degrees now. So, and yes, I have a coat, nice warm coat. That I wear. So I was out there cleaning off my car, and I just kind of did the important stuff, you know, while my car's running. I didn't think to clear off the hood or the top of it. It's been a while since I've had to clean off a car. So then I'm driving down the road, and stuff's kind of blowing. I said, oh, that's not a problem. Well, then later on, after I got out of work at 10:30, I go to Target, and it's not too far from where I work, so I don't have to go very fast. But then I was driving, oh, thank you very much. I was driving from Target home, and I do get to go 50. Go down some of the roads, and I'll tell you, man, snow was blowing everywhere, and I felt bad for people behind me, but oh well, it snowed. It was very nice. I got to enjoy it. It stuck a little bit. Our grass was covered there at the condo. I don't know about any of you. It didn't really stick on the road. The thing I was afraid of, though, was that it was going to be wet enough that then it would get cold enough to freeze. That's what I was terrified of. But thankfully, where I live, it was warm enough, I think, that the roads and the sidewalks didn't freeze. So I was very happy about that. But Christina's coworker yesterday called her and said, I can't get out of my driveway. And she said, you're fine, all the roads are clear. She said, yeah, but my driveway's not. She said, well, get out there with a shovel and shovel it. You're coming to work. So, yeah. We had call-offs yesterday, too. I was surprised. But it's like, it's not enough to keep count, and yet people were like, oh, it's a snow day, I'll just go play. I'm like, you're 30 years old, it's not snow day, you have to come to work. But, yeah, I love the snow, I enjoy the snow, I grew up around the snow. Didn't have to clean it up too much as a kid, but now you get to clean up and do all the adult stuff. So. All right, so this morning, We are in Matthew 26. This is one of the longer chapters because we're talking about, again, we're going into the Passion. This is going to be the day before, we're getting into the evening before the crucifixion here, when this is all going to happen, this is all going to take place. So this chapter is pretty long because it has to do with that time immediately before the crucifixion and everything that's going to take place. So this chapter is pretty big. I chose only a chunk here before we get into like Passover and the institution of communion. I think we might even go into that depending on what we do today. But I want to look at something this morning. So we're here in Matthew 26, verse 14. And can I get someone to read verses 14 through 16, please?
Then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, "What are you willing to give me if I hand him over to you?" So they counted out for him 30 silver coins. And from then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over.
Here's an interesting way. So, who has the word betray? Anywhere in there. You have betray, you have betray, you've got betray, you've got betray. So some of you have betray. Who of you, for the first part, has hand over? Look for an opportunity to hand him over or hand him over. Okay. Same word. Same word. Hand him over, betray, deliver. It's all the same word. But some reason when we look at that word betray, we think of something as evil, with an evil intent. Okay, in this situation, this is something I think Tyler and I kind of jive on here. Not necessarily, but I know I do. Is the idea, this is going to sound controversial, but this is one that's thrown about in theological circles. The idea that Judas wasn't doing this to get Jesus killed. There's the idea that here there's a tax that needs to be paid because Jesus is in Jerusalem. And then instead of just outright paying it, that Judas is going to be kind of the guy, because he's the money bag holder. We learned that in John. He's the one who keeps the purse. And he's going to say, what am I going to get out of this so that I can bring Jesus to the Sadducees, or I can bring them to him and say, hey, here he is, and you can do with him whatever you like. But he's not necessarily looking to get him killed. And if he is, the means about which he goes to do it is to bring about the bringing of the kingdom of heaven, the cause. Judas could have had heroes. Does anyone know what kind of heroes he might have had when we think about the time between the end of Malachi and the beginning of the New Testament? The Zealots. And who were they?
They were the guys that would go around and they lived in the hills and they'd come down and kill all of the bad guys.
They killed bad guys. They were looking to turn over the Roman Empire. And does anyone know the heroes of Hanukkah? The Maccabees. The Maccabees. Joseph Maccabee with the Maccabean Revolution, or the Maccabean Revolt. Again, they were looking at the Hasmonean dynasty. That's the Jewish rulers at the time that were working with the Romans. And they hated what they were doing. And so they revolted against them, and they brought about kind of different institutions, and one of them being during that time, Hanukkah gets to get celebrated. But they were fighting against the rulers at the time because they didn't think that it was fair the way that they were being treated. There was something specific, and I can't think of it at the moment, that happened that caused Joseph Maccabee to specifically bring up the revolt.
Wasn't that the desecration of the temple?
I believe that's one of them, but I can't remember the specific instance where the emperor who did it. That's my thing. I can't remember exactly who did it. But what we see here is we have heroes. You know, for me it was Hulk Hogan when I was a kid. Some of you know Hulk Hogan. You know Randy Savage, Rick Rude, all those guys. I loved wrestling. I thought wrestling was great. It was real to me because stuff that happened in movies was fake, ironically enough. And then the stuff that the wrestlers doing was so real, and they were challenging each other. And this guy was my favorite, and even when he got beaten, he still barely got beaten, and he would barely beat the bell sometimes, and he didn't get his shoulder off in time and off the mat, and he was a wrestler, and he was my hero. But it turned out that my hero wasn't such a great guy in real life. It turned out that my hero as a kid was kind of doing a performative art no different than the movies. things happen, stuntmen jump over explosions, and it looks so great. In the movies, it looks wonderful. And these people actually put their lives on the line. Well, he did too, but in a way that wasn't really that heroic. Well, here, Judas may have had a hero in the Maccabees. And he may have seen, I'm sorry?
And Caiaphas was the ruler.
Caiaphas is Sanhedrin. He's the ruler of the Sanhedrin at this time.
No, this was back in the Maccabees thing. It was Antiochus Epiphanes.
Oh, Antiochus. Epiphanes. Okay. I thought you said Caiaphas. I'm sorry. Yeah, he's the ruler of the Sadducees, or excuse me, of the Pharisees, the Sanhedrin. So the high priest. So he may have had these Maccabees and Joseph Maccabee as heroes. And so when he looks at Jesus and he sees Jesus being so humble, he sees Jesus being so innocent, he says, I know how to spark this thing. We're in Jerusalem. They're seeking a way to kill him. If he's going to die, and he's the Messiah, ergo, if he dies, he has to do his job and overturn the Roman Empire. He's got to do it, right? That's the idea of why Judas, is the idea that floats around, of why Judas possibly sought to turn over Jesus to the high priest, or why he was turning them over to the Sanhedrin. He was trying to get the coming about of the new age that was supposed to happen. Having known the prophets, having known the Old Testament prophecies, having known the heroes of Scripture, saying, wait a minute, these guys all pointed to Messiah. If this is the guy, if this is Messiah, then he can't really die. He can't really get put to death. He's going to overturn the empire. He's going to bring the Jews into the new millennium. Everything's going to happen that's supposed to happen according to prophecy. Now remember, and this is something extremely important to remember, Judas wasn't a tag-along. What was Judas a part of?
One of the 12.
He was one of the 12. And who made him one of the 12?
Jesus.
Jesus himself chose Judas, just like he chose Simon the Zealot, just like he chose Simon Peter, who's going to do something else that we're going to get to. He chooses these individuals for a specific purpose. They all contribute something. Yes?
And that theory makes more sense, because at the end, when he kills himself, because he's remorseful.
Yeah, what is Judas's response to the death of Jesus?
What have I done?
What have I done? And he goes and he kills himself. Because, again, he sees someone who is potentially his real hero that he's seen now not living up to what he thought was going to happen. And Judas doesn't get to see the completion of the kingdom of heaven coming. He doesn't get to see it. He's not one of the ones that gets to live to see the propagation of Christianity, or even the seeds of Christianity, because he makes the choice to kill himself. And I can imagine, and I'm kind of jumping the gun on this a little bit, jumping ahead, but I can imagine that when Peter does his betrayal, that's upcoming in January, we'll get to that. When Peter does his betrayal, even though he doesn't, Peter has a response to do when he is predicted that he's going to denounce Christ 3 times, and he goes and does it, he too has the same opportunity to kill himself. And then just say, forget it, I've wronged my Christ, I've wronged my Jesus, but he doesn't do that. Same thing here with Judas. Yes, it's something that happens that's more awful with the killing of Christ, but at the same token, he has essentially betrayed his Lord and Master, and he goes and does it where he has had an opportunity to not do that. So again, when I look at all the evidence here, I tend to think and look more that Judas was looking for an opportunity to let Jesus become the Christ. Not the way that Jesus was going to go about doing it. But instead saying, I get it, 3 days, he'll come back, okay, he's going to die, no, maybe he doesn't die, he's just going to wipe him out, and yet it doesn't happen the way he wants it to happen. So when I look at Judas, I see him as some sort of a sorrowful character, not being an antagonist, because again, he's never mentioned in any of the epistles. Judas has never mentioned any of the epistles as being an evil fellow. There are some instances in John, the way that John kind of describes him, Satan enters him and so forth, the way it talks about how, and again, there's an opportunity there for Satan to do his work, but how it talks about that he was greedy. So when we talked about the perfume that's being dumped, And Judas says, wait a minute, that could have been used to feed the poor. Again, John kind of says that he's doing it not because he really wanted to feed the poor, but because he was greedy. He held the purse and he would take money from it. So if there was money that was in the purse, because the perfume gets sold, he gets a little cut of that. So whether or not this individual was someone who was evil, with evil intent, or whether he was an individual who was sort of a tragic protagonist, whatever that be, we know that at this point, we know for a fact that he is now going to look for an opportunity to turn Jesus over to the high priest, to Caiaphas, to the Sanhedrin. He's looking for this opportunity wherever he can find it. So, verse 17. We're getting into the fun crux of how we always start when we talk about the last days here, just the last few days. So we're going to start in verse 17. Can I get someone to do 17 down through 19, please?
On the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Where do you want us to make preparations for you to eat the Passover?" He replied, "Go into the city to a certain man and tell him, 'The teacher says, my appointed time is near. I am going to celebrate the Passover with my disciples at your house.' So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them and prepared the Passover."
Now it sounded like I said that. What's something interesting that it says here? What does it say right in the first few words? On what?
On the
First day of what?
Feast of unleavened
The
bread.
festival of unleavened bread.
Festival. How long is the festival?
It's like 7 days.
7 days. Where's Passover in that 7 days?
The last day.
No, it doesn't.
At the end.
It depends. It's usually towards the end. Now, if this is the first day of unleavened bread, when would that be?
Monday.
Monday. But wait a minute. We've had a period of things that have happened before this event. See, this kind of throws everything into kind of a whack. Is this the first day of unleavened bread? Is it the first day of the festival? Okay? There's lots of different ideas here that this specifically is the day before the sacrificing of the lamb that's going to become the Passover meal. There's also the idea that kind of conflicts a little bit with the way that John says it. John says that Christ is crucified on a preparation day. Is that preparation day the day for Passover? Because it would have been the day that the lambs were being sacrificed in the temple courtyard. Or is it the preparation day for the Sabbath that happens on Saturday? All of these things kind of float around. The only thing we know is that the first day of unleavened bread is when he's getting this meal prepared. Could this have been several days before, and the Bible's putting it here as an indication of when that would happen? That could be. So it's like sort of if you're reading a manuscript and you get to a point that said, now previously they had done this. This is what this could also be saying. The Bible doesn't always operate in chronological order. Okay, so when you see something, the writer didn't necessarily say, oh, let me go back and put that in chapter 3. It didn't exist. They couldn't go back and edit the scroll that they were working with. So this event could have been something that had happened previously that they now are coming to fruition. And this is why it's stating it. Okay? Because they did as they were told. And then when Passover comes, then they go and say, okay, remember that we had said we were going to set it up here? We're setting it up. And the guy says, oh, okay, I remember when you guys came and talked to me. That could be what's happening here. It doesn't necessarily mean it's happening in exactly the chronological order. But we know that this happened on the first day of unleavened bread. Jesus tells them this. Now, what's something interesting you see about Jesus here when he says what he says to his disciples? What kind of pops out at you? Does anything pop out?
Go into the city to a certain man.
Okay.
What man?
What man?
Which man?
Which man? Does it necessarily list what man? No. Do you think Jesus literally said certain man? We think it's interesting that everything transcribed is literally spoken by Jesus.
It's
In
in
fact-
red.
What's that?
It's in red.
It's in red. Right. There's a passage I was talking to Tyler about last week that's in red. Oh, it's where Paul is talking about, my grace is sufficient for you. And in one of the Bibles I have, it's either on my phone or it's one that I was using at the time. It says, my grace is sufficient for you, my power is made, my strength is made perfect in your weakness. And it has that in red. And I said, do you think that Jesus literally says that to Paul? And people would say, it's in red, right? Who made it in red? Paul did, right? He wrote in red, just so you know. Although that would be very, very, very helpful had he done that. No, that's added later on. In fact, that's added far later on, in centuries far past the writing of the scriptures. So it's something that's conjecture. Okay? Did he literally say it that way? Are the things that are said literally said that way? Or are they kind of paraphrased? Okay? Does the Spirit give someone the ability to specifically make mention of everything? What I do know is there's a certain man that they're supposed to go to. Whether or not Jesus specifically mentioned who it was or not, we don't know, but we know that there's a specific individual that they're to go to.
His name is being withheld to protect the innocent.
Right. I actually like to think, and this is something that's really fun. It's never of any importance, but I think that it was the same guy that had given him the colt and the donkey.
That's what I'm saying. I was going to refer to that, yeah.
It's one of those things that for my mind said, well, if the guy had the colt and the donkey, he's got to have some funds. He's got to have some money. And Jesus, having known this individual, that individual probably knows who Jesus is. He probably respects him because previously it says the master requires. And here he says the teacher says, so they may know who this guy is. So they go back to him and say, hey, remember that donkey and that colt we got? He says, yeah. Well, Jesus needs something else. He goes, oh, sure, I've got a big giant upper room you guys can use. Because we know this doesn't belong to any one of the disciples, at least any one of the apostles, any one of the 12. We know that it definitely doesn't belong to Jesus. But we know that it belongs to an individual that I think would have had some relation or understanding of who Jesus is.
I read some places, actually the past few days, when I was reading about Mark, that it was his parents' house, maybe? I don't know.
Whose parents' house?
Mark's parents' house. Mark.
Oh, Mark's parents' house? John Mark's parents' house?
Yeah.
I've never heard that, but that would be very interesting if it was. There's a lot of things that come from tradition, like even Mark having written Mark. The idea is that Mark was written by Peter transcribing over to a scribe, or dictating to a scribe, and then the scribe was writing Mark out. But it's interesting that things are omitted in Mark, like where Peter walks on water, but Peter may have seen this as a failure of his and then not written it. But yeah, there's a lot of different interesting ideas that come up, but that's, I guess, one of them where it could have been John Mark's parents' house, and they lived in Jerusalem and would have expansive upper room that they could sit in. And think of like an area kind of like this. It would have been just open. Interestingly enough, for Thanksgiving, I was at a couple's house, my friend's daughter and her husband's house, and they live in, it's an apartment above the Chamber of Commerce. So there's like 50 steps to get up to this upper stairs. But their living room / kitchen / dining room is pretty close to the size of this room. It's a big size. There's where the kitchen area is, it's kind of raised up on a dais. So you have to kind of like walk over to the kitchen, then all the appliances and everything are there. Because it used to be offices. And they had to add in all that plumbing and everything there. So it's huge. It's got 3 giant bedrooms, so it's this very good place. And they get it for a great deal because they need to rent it out to somebody. But it's, yeah, I can see it being that kind of area. Like a room a lot like this, and you would have stuffed in however many disciples there would have been. There probably were a lot more than just the 12, as they're the apostles. One of them says that Lazarus is there, reclining on Jesus, or Lazarus is near them, being with the disciples, being as he is a disciple, in fact, of Christ, one that Christ weeps over when he dies. So it would have been a very large room, and I believe that possibly this was an individual that would have known who Jesus was, and that's why they can go to him. Something that I really like when I think about this is I think about the intention of getting Jesus. He always has an intentionality about something. When he talks about the colt relating to the same situation, a similar situation, he says, go to the guy, say there's a need, and let the need be filled. He has faith that need's going to get filled, that there's going to be no quibbling or squabble about it, it's just going to happen. And he says, intentionally, go do this thing. And what his disciples did, they don't really fight him on it that we see. They go and they obey. They go and they do what he said. There's a lot of trust, I think, that goes both ways here. He trusts they're going to obey, and they trust what he says is true. So I really enjoy that there's that trust factor that goes between all of them, and Jesus' intentionality about telling his disciples to do something, and they go and they do it. Again, they did as Jesus directed them, and they prepared this, not the unleavened bread feast, but they prepared this Passover meal. Now, Passover is not just one event. It's several events over this unleavened bread time. So, something we might get into as we get into later on about how it all works together in 3 days and so forth. But yeah, so now they're getting ready to eat this meal. Can I get someone to do 30 down through 25, I'm sorry.
20, we're on
20, thank you, down through 25.
When evening had come, he sat down with the 12. Now as they were eating, he said, Assuredly I say to you, one of you will betray me. And they were exceedingly sorrowful, and each of them began to say to him, Lord, is it I? He answered and said, He who dipped his hand with me in the dish will betray me. The Son of Man indeed comes, just as it is written of him. But woe to the man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been good for that man if he had not been born. When Judas, who was betraying him, answered and said, Rabbi, is it I? He said to him, You have said it.
Okay, so who is dipping their bread into the dish with Jesus?
He said,
Who just said it? Karen, say what you just said.
Weren't they all?
Weren't they all? They're all doing it. They're all dipping the bread in the dish. I believe it is John that says that Jesus dips it and hands it to Judas. Okay? But here it just says, whoever dips his bread in the dish. Now when they hear this, all of them are asking, is it I? Is it I? Is it I? We don't know how Jesus responds. It doesn't say that. Okay? It doesn't say it. And yet, here we are with this instance where Judas now says what he says. Now, deep dive. What does Judas, or after Judas says, is it I, Rabbi? What does Jesus say to him? What is his exact response?
You said
You
it.
have said so.
You've said so. What else? Carol, what does yours say?
Mine is, thou hast said.
Okay, you have said it. You have said so. Does anyone have anything different? Yes, Mike.
That says, so you say.
So you say. Okay. Anyone else have anything other than that?
This one says, yes, it is you.
Yes, it is you. What translation is that?
NIV?
NIV. Yes, it is you. Does anyone have anything other than that? Anything more simple? The direct translation of this is Sai Ipos. This statement is just, you say, you command, the word's yours. When else does Jesus say something very similar to this?
Oh, to Pilate.
To Pilate.
Yeah.
Pilate, and he's being accused during this time.
If you are, he says, you have said.
Are you the Christ, the Son of God? And we say, you have said it, or you have said so. It's smaller than that. It's simpler than that. Sai Ipos. You say, think of it like this. We have a lot of different idioms in our language, but there's one that when someone says, man, it's cold outside, people would say, you could say that again. When taken on face value, when I say it's cold outside and someone says, you can say it again, what would I say?
It's cold.
It's cold outside. And then you would look at me very oddly and say, that's okay. That's the context, correct? The context is that whatever someone has said, they say again. What's the other one? The other big one is I think of when someone says, man, it's cold outside. Someone says, boy, you said it, brother. Okay, I did. I appreciate that. Yes, I'm the one who said it. There's no implication there. It doesn't exist. The implication is either you repeat what you say or you're just agreeing with what you said and saying that, well, yeah, you said it. Does that mean it's true or not? Not necessarily. Do we know that Judas fully understood that Jesus was saying, you're the guy? We don't know. Because again, when Jesus repeats what he says in this same way, that same wording, when he says it to the high priest, when they're kind of yelling and screaming at him, or when Pilate asks him this question, are you the Christ? Are you the Son of God? Are you saying this? And when he says, you say, he's not really agreeing or not, but even then, they take it as an agreement. The idea exists that what Jesus is saying here can be turned both ways. That he's not fully agreeing with what's stated, kind of like when you say, you could say that again, we would say that's an agreement. Or, you said it, brother, we could say that's an agreement. The context may exist, and yet it may not also exist. So when Judas hears this, just like when Pilate hears it, or when the Sanhedrin hear it, the idea is that he's not concretely saying, yes, he's not. He's using subversion to say, well, the words came out of your mouth. Has anyone heard that before? The way that he says that to Pilate is sort of like saying, well, you're the one who said it, I didn't say it. That's a lot like what he's doing here. Hey, you're the one who said it, I'm not the one who said that. The words came out of your mouth. And not so many words when he just says, you say. That's the idea here. Yes, Mike?
Verse 22 says, the disciples were very upset and began to ask him one after the other, surely, Lord, you don't mean me. Doesn't say anything about him speaking to any of them.
We don't know that he says anything. In John, it references Peter, where he talks to Peter and he talks to John when he says, is it I? I don't know the exact quote with what he replies to John, the beloved one that's reclining on Jesus. When he says, I don't know exactly what he says, but he does reply in that instance. Matthew just doesn't record his replies. I think in that instance when Peter says it, he responds to Peter, oh, you're going to deny me 3 times. I believe in John is where he dips it and hands it over to Judas and then says, go and do what you've come to do. And then Judas gets up and leaves, and he doesn't actually get to have the whole blessing and the whole communion as it's set up. But in this instance, we just have what he's recorded here. And in fact, he asks the question, we know that Jesus in fact responds. But what's great here when you look at this is that we also know that this was something they took as a negative. Because when he says it, it says they were very, so back in verse 22, they were very sorrowful. Who's going to betray me? Who's going to turn me over? Who's going to hand me over? It doesn't say to whom. It doesn't say whom is going to turn, or who they are going to be turned over to, or whom was going to be betrayed to. And yet each one of them is very sorrowful, and they say to one another and to Jesus, they're asking, is it I? Is it I? Is it I? Okay? So they know for some reason that this is going to be something that's not a good thing. And yet, Judas still asks that same question, knowing previously, as we've read, that he's the one who has in fact started this whole thing. He's the one who gets Jesus to ask it. Jesus asks it because he knows what's going to happen. And yet Judas still opens his mouth. Does he have to do that in this instance? He doesn't really have to do that. He could just sit there and be innocent and not say anything. But then what happens when people are really quiet in instances like that?
Think they're guilty.
We kind of think they're guilty. I think of my wife a lot when I goof with her and I have funny little voices and things, but she'll say, Russell, did you such and such? And I have two options. I can either tell the truth and say, yeah, I did that. I can be confident in saying it. Sometimes I can say, yeah, go ahead, what are you going to do? I did that. I can say sheepishly, yeah, I did that. Then I have the other option of saying, no, I'm lying completely. That doesn't mean I always do it. Okay, I'm defending myself here. But if I did it and I want to lie, I can say, no, I didn't do that. I don't like lying to my wife. So instead, I have a third option, and that's, I don't know. Happened, and if it happened by my hand, it may or not have happened the way in which it happened had I had done it. And if I had done it, then it would have happened the way that I did it if I had done it.
That couldn't fly.
That doesn't fly.
No, that doesn't fly.
And yet I use it every single time when it's a thing that's like, did you really do that? Well, yeah.
Buying that.
I've been blaming on the dog.
Blame it on the dog. Hey, there are only certain things I can blame on the dog, and that's it. That's it. Nothing else.
You said it.
Yeah, nobody eats shoes on anything. Just thankfully, nobody does that. But yeah, so here, typically, if I didn't say anything and just said,
You're guilty.
I'm guilty by association. Just by not answering the question. Why? Because people who speak truth would do what? Say something. You call me today, no, I didn't do that. I think here Judas is kind of doing the same thing. I think that he's saying, wait a minute, if I don't say anything, what happens? If I keep quiet, then maybe they'll think by implication that I have, in fact, done the very thing that I'm going to be implicated in. And he says, no, let me kind of play it easy. Is it I, Lord? And then Jesus says what he says.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there any, and there may not be, any significance, like in the translation I have, which is the old NIV, when the disciples say it, they say, surely not I, Lord. But when Judas says it, he says, surely not I, Rabbi. Is there?
Well, there's the Adonai and Rabboni, right? Not necessarily. There could be. I don't know what the other Gospels say about specifically what they say in that instance, whether or not it's Lord or not, or is it I think in John it just says, am I the one? I think the direct translation is, am I the one? So necessarily, each one of them, it's sort of like when you look at the Old Testament, it says, everyone prayed together, da 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 da. Is everyone saying those words right then? No. So is every single one of them going around the table, Bartholomew, what do you got to say? Is it I, Lord? Peter, is it I, Lord? James, is it I, Lord? I don't think it's like that. I think it's a reference to just, they're asking the question of him.
I think they were all asking about the same time.
Right.
You're teaching,
I can imagine it's a jumble.
you're teaching there now, but we have something like you with the Linda thing. Do you think, do you think, this type of thing, but personally, when I read this and he says, when Jesus says to Judas, yes, it is you, I have it in my head that Jesus has the right answer, and he's looking to the right person. He's not looking at all the disciples at that point.
Mm-hmm.
To me, he's looking and saying,
I don't know how close Judas was to him.
well, I don't know that they were,
Yeah.
but if I'm talking to you about something, which I'm doing right now, I'm not looking over here to Linda and telling her what I'm saying to you. You're hearing me, what I'm saying.
Well, in this instance, I really think that because he specifically pointed out, I think that he does say it. Whereas here, when it talks about, and even in John, when it references this, it says there in verse 22, where it says, they were saying to him and one after another. In John, it says they were also saying it to each other at the same time.
Yeah.
I can imagine that Jesus is very sorrowful in this instance as they're kind of saying around, you know, is it me? Is it me? Is it me? I can't believe it's me. Oh, is it you? Is it you? And as they're saying this, Judas kind of looks at Jesus directly in the eye and says, is it I, teacher? And then Jesus, not under his breath, but I can say, like, listen, you said it.
Yeah.
And then just leaves it at that because they don't really respond. That's another thing that's interesting is they don't actually respond to what Jesus says here.
I think that's
No
what
one
I'm
responds.
trying to have in my head to say, but what you're saying
Yeah.
right there, it's not like one-to-one, I'm gonna ask this one, and then one, I'm gonna ask this one, and Jesus was, until it seems like they didn't talk to Jesus much around there.
I don't know, and that's what's
So,
interesting.
But then, when everybody else answered, Judas hasn't answered anything at that point, I don't think, at that point.
Right.
Then he says to Jesus, teacher, is it me? Because everybody else had answered,
Yeah.
and he,
I think that when you look at the way they say it, they keep saying it, and then he says, whoever dips the hand in the dish with me, they would dip bread, and it would be in either wine or it would be oil. They would be dipping it in these, I don't want to say the word sauce, but they would be dipping in something to kind of sop up the food. Sorry? Yeah, in some kind of a liquid. They're dipping it in so that they can kind of give the bread a little bit more flavor. And I see them, they're all kind of sharing. So he was close enough to be able to share the dish with him. We know that there were others that would be sharing with him as well. But they're reclining at these tables, so they're not sitting in chairs like we think of. This isn't the Da Vinci painting. You know, you don't have Judas way over here and Jesus is in the middle and Judas kind of dips his bread. Dips it with Jesus and then just goes, hey, you're the guy! And everybody just, you know, no, that's not how it worked. Yeah, Karen.
Could there have been more than one dish?
They probably are. Oh, there's dishes all around. This is a larger room. And this isn't just the 12. Here it mentions that the 12 are with him. In John and I believe it's Luke talk about the disciples. So there isn't just the 12 specifically with him. There would have been others. But he's got the 12 kind of really close to him. Remember, these are his friends. These aren't just students he's teaching. And I think sometimes we think of it that way. Jesus looked to these guys. He looked to them to do his will. He looked to them to listen to what he was saying and actually perform the mission that he had come to bring to earth, to start the kingdom of heaven. So these guys were really close to him, so he would have been close, and there would have been more than one dish. But they could have been moving here and there, getting up and trying this oil or trying that wine. So this is a dinner. This isn't just some nice and easy sitting down. Okay, we're having the Passover, guys. This is how it's working. I'm going to do like this, like they do in the paintings. And we're just gonna do it. No, it's not like that. It was a big feast, a big community, a big convoluted mess of voices and praising and worshiping and having fun. So this isn't like we think about it a lot of times, where we think of it being so somber and so quiet. And we think like we do communion so quietly. This would have been a bombastic opportunity. And then when there's a prayer, people would get quiet. They'd recite the Shema. They'd recite the different Jewish prayers that they would have around Passover. And then they would share in these things and laugh and have a great time. And this is kind of breaking that up just a little bit, but there's still that commotion that's going on. So you would have had an opportunity to be able to dip with him at any time. But yeah, there's not just one sitting there. There's one for like communal area, one for other areas around the room for different tables that they're sitting around. Again, they're not all sitting on one side like Da Vinci paints. What's the joke? We want a table for 24, but we're all going to sit on one side. Okay. Thanks. What's that?
The maitre d' was like, what?
Yeah, what? Yeah. So, but that's what I really take away from this, especially is when Jesus responds to him the way he responds to him, just saying, you said it. I didn't say it. That's not what I said. You're the one who said the words. It came out of your mouth. I think would be a better one. Came out of your mouth. So.
Isn't there one of the Gospels that says, right after he says, you have said so, it says, then Satan enters?
Yes, John.
John.
Yeah, John is very hard on Jesus.
27.
What's that?
John 13:27.
Okay.
No, after the piece of bread, Satan entered him, and Jesus said to him, do what you do quickly.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. He does, like, right as soon as it happens, he says, get out of here, do your job. Yeah. So, what is it? Would you say 13 what?
13:27.
13:27. Yeah. So, John is really, really hard on Jesus. So if you ever want to read about Judas, there's a little bit more information in John, especially during this time. That's when it talks about, I think, in the previous chapter, that in chapter 12, I think, is where it talks about him being the one who holds the bag of money in John there. And it says that he was robbing from it, so that's why he wanted to have the 100 pieces or whatever, silver, because then he could rob from the bag when they sold off the perfume, and he could feed the poor. He was feeding the poor, right? He's poor, right? Yeah. So John's a really good place to get some information on Judas. So does anyone else have anything for that whole section before we get into the institution of the Lord's Supper here?
Thank you, Russell.
Yes?
I see it as, well, like all of us, we wouldn't each say, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. We wouldn't each say, is it I, is it I? Because how would he be able to answer them? You know, like, oh, who said that? You know, or I think it was very organized because they're very concerned. Is it really, is it me? You know? And with Judas being what we've seen is close to Jesus and some of the, like, chosen or whatever, and, you know, and I see it like he took the bread himself, Jesus, and he said it's the one who dips, and at that time Judas was, you know, heading towards his plate or whatever, and they both dipped at the same time.
I think John.
Let me read that.
John's where he dips it and gives it to Judas.
And the disciples looked at one another, perplexed about whom he spoke. Now, there was leaning on Jesus' bosom one of his disciples whom Jesus loved.
Yeah.
Simon Peter therefore mentioned to him to ask who it was of whom he spoke. And leaning back on Jesus' breast, he said to him, Lord, who is it? Jesus said, it is he whom I shall give a piece of bread when I have dipped it. And having dipped the bread, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon.
Yeah, John's very much more specific about how this operates, about how this all goes forward. John specifically states how it works. Now, they would have been sharing, this would have been something that was not unnormal for Jesus to do, because later on when he breaks the bread and gives it to his disciples, that's not unnormal for the teacher to be the one doing that. So for him to do it at that moment wouldn't have been something that's crazy for them to see, but the way he says it, we get to see what's happening there in hindsight. They don't have that opportunity, so when they see it, they're kind of confused about what does that mean? Of course he's going to hand bread to Judas. So yeah, John is very more specific when it comes to the layout of how this all happens. And we're reading it from Matthew, which they both have very good nuances, but John is very, very, very implicative of what Judas himself does and really kind of pulls him apart.
Yeah, because Matthew says, he who has dipped his hand in the dish with me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The implication is that he's saying everybody has taken a part in this. He's not going, okay, everybody stop. Judas, you want to have some bread? And then Judas dips and he goes, No, that's not what's happening. It's far more subversive. Because does Jesus come right out and say stuff pretty plainly? No. The majority of the time, Jesus now, in John, we see that he speaks very plainly to his disciples in the garden, because he's got to clarify everything for them. But a lot of times he does everything in a subverted way. He says, oh, here's this, and the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that's planted and blooms into a giant tree, and the birds get to come and rest there. And everyone's going, I don't want trees and birds. What does that have to do with kingdoms and earth? Yeah, so Jesus doesn't just come out and say things directly. He uses the situation to play out his plan, and he lets it flow. Because again, like prophecy, prophecy just doesn't come and say, this guy at this time is going to do that thing, because then everyone would say, well, we don't want that to happen, so we'll stop that guy from doing that thing. Jesus does the same thing. It's very, very clandestine, I guess would be a good word, the way that he operates. So,
Hey, Russell.
yeah.
But if it wasn't witnessed, you wouldn't be in the Bible.
That's right. So they saw it, but they don't say anything. They don't say, oh, Judas, you're the guy,
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, part of the discussion was, so many people are talking at one time, nobody knows who did,
Mhm.
but somebody observed and was able to write about it.
I think it's, again, part of that is hindsight, because they have the ability to go, that's what happened. And to the Holy Spirit gives insight when they're writing these things. And again, this is something I do want to clarify. When the Bible was written, like there's a lot of different translations for the Psy-Ipos. In the original language, in the original writings, the Bible is flawless. It is flawless, it is perfect. When we go and try to translate it into English, it's a little bit bumpy. And sometimes we can't convey the exact context and how it's meant to be spoken. They could have completely understood everything that Jesus was saying then. And they're conveying this and they just didn't say anything to Judas. And could have been very polite about it, like, oh, yeah, that's great, he's going to go do it. And yet at the same time, we look at it and see a much more nebulous kind of conversation. And we don't see the direct pinpoints, maybe like they did or didn't.
But wasn't, and sorry, I'm not versed in the Bible like you are. There is one instance where they turn around and say, where's Judas going? Like, they don't know what's going on. Did Judas have to go buy more supplies? Was something forgotten for them?
I think that's in John too. Is that in John as well? Yeah, it says the same thing in John. Like, what's he doing? He's like, he's doing the thing that he's supposed to do.
Right.
And then they don't question that. They go, oh, he's going to whatever, pay the tax or whatever. And again, this is kind of in the evening. So why would he be doing that? We say, and yet we don't see that they kind of give anything after that. They go, oh, Jesus knows. Again, there's that word there, trust. They just trust what Jesus is saying, whatever he's doing is true.
That's right after this, because
Yeah.
everyone at the table knew what the reason was he said this to him for some thought, because Judas had the money box
Mhm.
that Jesus had sent him, buy those things we need for the feast, or that he should give something to the poor. So having received the piece of bread, he then went out immediately, and it was night.
Yeah. So again, why is he doing this in the middle of the night? We don't know. They didn't know. They just, again, they have that word trust, that they trust what Jesus is doing and what he's saying. So I appreciate you bringing that up. But they do know that there's something that's happening with Judas, but they're not exactly sure what is going on with it. Yeah, Mike.
Well, the next verse after all the other apostles asked you to meet, Jesus said something that just may not be perfect. He said, the man that dips his bread in the bowl with me is the one that would betray me. And then right after that, wasn't when Judas said, is it me, Lord? And he said, so you say, or whatever.
Well, he says it's the Son of Man goes as is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is handed over. So what it's saying is, the Son of Man goes as is written of him, is saying, the way that everything is written, prophesied about me, is supposed to happen, it's going to happen. But by the hand of whom it happens, it would be better if that man had never been born. So it's going to be better for Judas if he had never even been born than to betray Jesus, and yet we know he goes and does it. But that's what it's saying, yeah. The Son of Man, it has to happen the way it's written, and yet by the hand of who it's written, woe to them. Yeah.
And it was all part of God's great plan.
All part of the plan, and I think that if we were there in the time, I know for my part, I think I would have been a lot like Peter, like I said last week. I think of myself as Peter a lot, as being this dumb, not dumb, but enthusiastic would be a good word. Enthusiastic follower of Jesus that absolutely says braggartish things and comes out and says, oh, wait a minute, that's not me. I'm not going to do that. And then when he doesn't say what he says, go, whew, okay, it's not me. Oh, boy. But then later goes, hey, Russell, yeah, what's up? You're going to deny me 3 times. No, I won't do that. And then when push comes to shove, I do it. So I think in that time when we put ourselves in those situations, we can see ourselves and the disciples kind of responding in those different ways. And I always kind of put that in my heart and say, I'm no different than these young guys. You know, they were young. They weren't guys who were probably my age. They were probably a lot younger, late teens, 20s, possibly even 30s for some of them, especially like Matthew being a tax collector. And it is possible that some of them may have been as old as Jesus, maybe older, but typically when they got proselytes, rabbis would have them be younger because they were raising them in the, not just in the faith, but in teaching. It would be teaching them. So it would be like college. So, yeah, it's a good discussion. I appreciate that. Anything else for that? Yeah.
I Googled, but I don't have my Bible on me, but it says the tradition says that the upper room belonged to Mary, mother of John Mark, a follower of Jesus, whose home likely housed these upper rooms used for early Christians.
Again, that's that word there, tradition. It's like, how did the disciples die? Tradition.
Yeah.
What is the name of the books? Like Matthew. Did Matthew really write Matthew? Yeah. Again, that's tradition. I never buy into tradition. Maybe that comes from my upbringing, but I don't always buy into tradition. I just like to say that could be a possibility, just like anything else. Yeah.
And it said parents, and then another one said Mary, who's his mother.
Would be John Mark's mother.
Yeah.
Talking about Mary being John.
Yeah, and then it said the parents.
That's a common name. Was Mary, Marius, Miriam?
Yeah. It said it was owned by the parents of John Mark.
Right.
Which then another Google part said Mary, you know, the mother of John Mark, which is still the parents.
It would be the parents, yeah.
When I went to Israel years ago, the guy took us to the place where it possibly would have been the upper room. And that upper room showed it a beautiful room. And there was like a ledge, like you were talking, if you go up here, like you have a house that's got 2 steps to go to the next area. That's what it was. It showed this area up here. You had to step up a little bit and it showed where they think possibly that is where the Passover took place, at that area, the food part there. That they sat there around the table there. And then the rest of them had this big, big room where everybody could have been, who was participating. But it was interesting to see that they said they think that is the possibility of where the
Yeah.
invasion took place.
I never buy into that.
But I don't, well, it's just what they think from history.
Israel likes to have its money, and when they get Christians, they go, oh, let me go visit where Jesus died, and let me go visit.
No.
Yeah, they go say, oh, hey, Jacob, go build a house. That's
I'm
really
not,
nice.
well, I,
You know, 2,000 years of wood rot, you know.
exactly, I understand that part.
Yeah,
You know, I know the host usually takes you around the different places.
yeah.
Where, and we had a very good guide. And he made it plain that they're saying that this is possibilities.
Possibility, yeah.
It's not necessarily the right place. In fact, they have two places where the tomb is. They think it could be here